Hi there, I'm Kate McClellan, and I've been a professional wedding planner for over 20 years now. I started Planning Collective when I noticed that though most couples are super excited about getting engaged, they quickly feel overwhelmed and intimidated by the actual process of planning their weddings. If left unchecked, this can lead to massive burnout and the urge to scrap all your plans and just elope. While this is totally normal, you don't have to sacrifice your sanity for your dream wedding. In the Wedding Planning Collective podcast, I'm going to share the processes, tips, and tools that all engaged couples like you need to feel confident, supported, and excited about your wedding plans again. Let's get started. Hey there, before we get to the episode, I have a quick question for you. Have you been unsuccessfully trying to shake that feeling that you're forgetting something when it comes to your wedding? You've got the Knot app and you've downloaded countless other planning checklists, but you just can't get rid of that sneaking suspicion that there's something you don't know yet. It's a very common feeling when it comes to wedding planning. So much so that I decided to put together a free resource to help get rid of what I call FOWO, the fear of wedding oversight. Yes, it does include that 12-month task checklist, but that's just the start. In addition to the ultimate wedding planning checklist, my new Don't Forget list also includes a wedding vendor checklist, your shopping list, a packing list for the wedding weekend, and a complete wedding item setup list to make sure that you are truly not forgetting anything when it comes to your wedding. And you heard me right, this list is free for you to grab right now. Just head over to planningcollective.com/forgetting and it's all yours. That's planningcollective.com/FORGETTING, and let's get rid of that FOWO together. All right, let's get on to the episode. It's Kate here. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Planning Collective podcast. In 2020, before I even started this podcast, I was bored during the pandemic and I randomly made a YouTube video on a question that I had recently been asked. Do I need to bustle my wedding dress? To me, the answer was so obvious, but it's one of those things that made me realize that there are so many things that are only obvious about weddings when you've been to as many weddings as I have been. So I put together this awful video. Maybe I'll link it in the show notes. We'll see. And I pretty much forgot about it. I was really surprised when I randomly went back to YouTube a couple weeks later and saw that it had over 1,000 views. Now, that is certainly not record-breaking, but I only had a handful of other videos and 0 subscribers, so I had no idea where those views came from. I realized it had somehow found its way in the algorithm to be featured in that up next or recommended for you videos like along the side, and apparently it was a question that a lot of other brides had too. So this was definitely one of the moments that I realized that I need to share more of those obvious to me moments with more than just my one-on-one clients. So a couple months later, this podcast was started. Now, today, I would like to revisit that question. We haven't talked about it in a while, and I've recently seen that brides are still tempted to skip the bustle. So let's talk about what a bustle is and why it would be hands down one of the most important components of your wedding reception. What is a bustle and why is it necessary? A bustle is what transitions the train of a dress from being longer in the back to being picked up and being the same length around the entire dress. So it essentially, again, picks up that train to make sure that you don't have any fabric dragging behind you as you're walking around in your dress. Bustles are almost always done by the seamstress with the rest of your alterations. So while you're getting the hem or anything else done, there are a ton of different styles, and some are super simple, but the more fabric or layers your dress has, or the longer the train is, the more elaborate your bustle is typically going to be. I would guess the average dress has about 5 to 8 hooks, loops, or ties per bustle, but I've seen some dresses that have over 20 before. As you're trying on dresses, you'll likely have preliminary conversations with your stylist about the types of bustle that go with that particular type of dress. But when you go into your first fitting, that's when you're really going to start discussing the bustle style with your seamstress. Make sure to bring it up if they do not in that first fitting appointment. So let's go back to that main question though. Do you need to bustle your dress? I get why you might be tempted not to. when else do you get to wear a dress with a train? It is such a princess vibe and a once in a lifetime moment, right? Why would you not want to like embrace that all night? Plus, you would get to save money on alterations if you skip the bustle. The answer is technically no, you don't need to bustle your dress, but I want to talk about why you will definitely regret it if you do skip on having that bustle put in. Even if you think that you won't be annoyed by holding your train, it's not going to bother you, I can 100% guarantee that guests will step on your train. People just simply aren't used to looking out for fabric on the ground around your feet. They're going to come up and give you a big hug, and they're not going to be thinking about it. They're going to be talking to your spouse and, again, not paying attention to the floor. It's just what happens. It's just one of those things. You can think that, no, I'll hold it, I'll be very careful. It's kind of similar to when I talk about having candles down the aisle for your ceremony. You might think my guests will never step on it. They're not going to trip or knock anything over. I promise you, I have been in the most formal of settings with very high-end black tie events. They will knock over those candles. And the same thing is going to happen with your dress. Someone is going to step on that train if it is not bustled. And that's just during cocktail hour. If you have plans on being on the dance floor, an unbustled dress with a train is actually pretty dangerous. Even a shorter train can be a major trip hazard, and leaving the train down will not only mean a dirty dress, but it could easily result in your dress getting ripped. The real truth is, even a bustled dress is likely to get stepped on. One of my most common emergency kit items is safety pins, and most of the time they're being used to secure a popped bustle that someone stepped on. I would say it's almost inevitably going to happen. In my eyes, it's a sign of a successful party. If you're having so much fun on the dance floor with your guests that your bustle doesn't hold up, that means you're having a great time and you're not stressing over the small stuff. Use those safety pins to pick that fabric back up and get on the dance floor. So while you technically don't need to have a bustle for your wedding gown, I highly recommend it. Even if you're pretty confident that you're going to leave your dress down, I recommend you have your seamstress put the bustle in so you at the very least have an option to bustle it during the reception. If it's not bothering you and no one's stepping on it, shoot me a message after and tell me how wrong I was, but at least you'll have the option for when that really does get annoying. We'll talk about veils another time because I can promise you, if you're thinking you're going to wear your veil the entire reception, your mind will probably be changed after about an hour or so of giving all of your guests hugs. But that is a whole nother topic. While we're talking about bustles though, let me share a few other tips that are going to make things easier on your wedding day. Make sure to bring someone with you to that final fitting appointment so the seamstress can show them how the bustle works. Moms or bridesmaids are perfect, but really anyone that's going to be there with you on the wedding day and able to help you with this is absolutely perfect. If it's not possible, and honestly, even if you do bring someone with you to the appointment, have them record the seamstress showing you how the bustle works so that you have that video to reference back to on your wedding day. The hooks, loops, or ties can really disguise well, especially if you have a lace dress. So having a video to help you find them can really be helpful. Ask your seamstress if it's possible to either number or color code the various hooks or ties on your bustle. This is going to make it so much easier for your designated bustler to know which pieces of fabric are going together. So essentially, your bustle is going to be the different layers of fabric being brought up together. A bustle is bringing the two different pieces of fabric together. Usually it's done by hooks or ties, sometimes buttons, but if you have a bunch of them, sometimes it's easy to get confused as to which one goes where. So if you have them color coded or numbered, it's going to make it so much easier so they know that one goes to one, two goes to two, and it just goes easily around the dress. Another tip is to add some time in your schedule to bustle your dress, especially if you have a more complicated or detailed bustle. In the past, I've had brides ask if they can wait until after the first dance to do their bustle, but I highly recommend that you do this before cocktail hour or before you're announced into the reception. You do not want to be in cocktail hour in a big room of people just walking around with your dress down. Again, that's exactly when they're going to step on it. So you should ideally have it bustled before you walk into the reception or your cocktail hour. If you are tempted to leave your dress unbustled for the first dance, make sure that you practice dancing with fabric draped behind you. I saw a brilliant reel on Instagram from @weddingdance.school on using a comforter around your waist to practice dancing with a ball gown style dress. I'll make sure to share it or do a remix when this episode comes out so you can find it easily. You can do something similar in practicing with a longer train, but I'm guessing that practicing with the train is going to help you realize that you definitely want to bustle your dress before the first dance. Another tip is to make sure that you have a crochet hook handy. Bustle loops can be really tiny and particularly difficult, especially if your ladies have acrylic nails or no nails at all. You can use a crochet hook to help you grab the little loop and bring it up and over the button or the hook. It's going to go so much faster. Side note, having a crochet hook on hand is also really helpful if your dress has those little hooks on the back. Even if your dress zips up and the hooks or the loops are decorative, they can be really challenging to put over the buttons. So even if, again, it's not really functional, having a crochet hook will keep it from being super time consuming, and you can use that to hook those buttons. And if you do have those buttons along the back of your dress, whether they're decorative or functional, make sure you have that crochet hook at the end of the night to help you get out of the dress as well. And finally, if you really don't want to bustle, or maybe you're going to be walking around quite a bit with your train down for photos before you're bustling, ask your seamstress to put a dress loop on the underside of your train. This way you can hook your dress loop around your wrist so you can keep your dress up off the floor without bunching it and wrinkling it. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Were you contemplating skipping the bustle, or have I convinced you to put one in? Head over to the Wedding Planning Collective Facebook group and let me know. And if you found this episode helpful, I would love it if you could take a quick second to rate and review. It's the best form of a thank you could give me, and it will help other couples find the wedding planning resources they need. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next episode.